ghost stories. Most of us think of them as simple entertainment, flickering campfire tales, urban legends whispered in the dark. But some stories refuse to fade into folklore. They carve themselves into history books, police files, and courtroom transcripts. They leave behind witnesses who had no reason to lie, hardened skeptics who walked away shaken, and places that seem to hold on to tragedy like a stain that won't wash away. These are the stories that defy dismissal. These are the ghosts that history couldn't silence. Tonight, we're stepping inside 5 of the most chilling, real-life hauntings ever recorded. And I warn you now, once you hear them, you'll never look at the dark the same way again. We begin in Philadelphia, in a building designed to erase men from the world, Eastern State Penitentiary. When it opened in 1829, it was hailed as revolutionary, a prison not for punishment, but for reform. But the reform was brutal. Each inmate was sealed in solitary confinement, their meals passed through small slots, their exercise taken alone in a high-walled yard where they couldn't see another soul. The architects believed silence and isolation would bring repentance. What it brought was madness. Guards reported inmates clawing at the walls, sobbing uncontrollably, or sitting in absolute stillness as if their minds had already broken. It didn't take long for the prison itself to develop a reputation for being haunted. Men spoke of whispers sliding through the corridors at night, voices with no bodies. Guards saw shadows that stretched and bent unnaturally, drifting across cell doors. Perhaps the most famous haunting came decades later, when Al Capone was locked inside. Capone, the most feared gangster in America, began screaming in his cell. He claimed that every night he was visited by the ghost of a man named Jimmy, a mobster he had ordered killed. Capone begged for forgiveness, shouting for Jimmy to leave him alone, his tough exterior stripped away in terror. Today, Eastern State stands in ruins, a crumbling museum of its own horrors. Tour guides lead visitors through cell block 12, and many have fled in fear. The most common report? Whispers. At first faint, then multiplying, circling the room until it feels as though dozens of invisible prisoners are closing in. From a prison built to hold men, we move to a ghost that refused to be silenced, even by death. This is the tale of the Greenbrier Ghost of West Virginia. In 1897, a young woman named Zona Heastershoe was found lifeless in her home. Her husband, Erasmus, told neighbors she had collapsed suddenly. The coroner signed off on natural causes, and within a day, Zona was buried. But her mother, Mary Jane Heaster, couldn't shake the feeling something was wrong. Then came the nights. Mary Jane claimed her daughter appeared at the foot of her bed, pale and sorrowful, for 4 nights in a row. On the final night, the ghost came close enough to touch. Zona spoke. Her husband had killed her, strangling her in a fit of rage. To prove it, she turned her head until it spun completely around. Horrified, Mary Jane went to the authorities. At first, they dismissed her. But her conviction was so unshakable, the prosecutor agreed to exhume the body. What they found shocked them. Zona's neck had been broken. Erasmus was arrested, and during his trial, Mary Jane testified about the ghostly visitations. The jury heard her story, and combined with the physical evidence, they convicted him of murder. To this day, it remains the only recorded case in American history where a ghost's testimony helped secure a conviction. Zona's grave still stands in Greenbrier, and her headstone reads, "Her death was avenged by her mother's prayer." Our third story takes us to England, to a fortress where power and betrayal have soaked the stones in blood, the Tower of London. For nearly 1,000 years, it has been a palace, a prison, and a place of execution. Countless lives ended on its grounds. traitors beheaded, princes smothered, queens betrayed. And perhaps no spirit haunts it more powerfully than Anne Boleyn. The second wife of King Henry VIII, Anne was accused of treason, adultery, and incest, charges historians now believe were fabricated to clear the way for Henry's next marriage. In 1536, she was executed on Tower Green, beheaded by a French swordsman. But her death was not her end. Guards throughout history have reported encounters with Anne's ghost. Some describe her as a pale woman in Tudor dress, drifting silently through the halls. Others claim she appears headless, holding her severed head in her hands. One of the most chilling accounts came from a captain of the guard, who reported that his men saw a ghostly procession in the chapel. Knights, ladies, and Anne herself, moving solemnly to the altar before vanishing. Even today, tourists swear they've seen her face in the chapel windows, staring outward, eyes filled with grief and accusation. The Tower of London is not merely a landmark, it is a prison of memory, and its most famous prisoner has never left. From the stone halls of London, we cross the sea to a vessel that carried both luxury and death, the RMS Queen Mary. In her prime, the Queen Mary was the epitome of elegance, ferrying Hollywood stars and royalty across the Atlantic. But during World War II, she became something else. Repainted gray, packed with soldiers, she was nicknamed the Grey Ghost. She transported thousands of men into battle, and not all returned. Death clung to her decks, and when the war ended, it stayed. Today, the Queen Mary is docked permanently in Long Beach, California, and is considered one of the most haunted locations in America. The ship's old swimming pool, drained long ago, is notorious. Guests and staff have heard splashing, laughter, and the patter of children's feet on wet tile. Phantom footprints have appeared out of nowhere, leading into the shadows. The engine room holds an even darker secret. In 1966, a sailor was crushed by a watertight door during a drill. Visitors today claim to see him, sometimes a shadow, sometimes a full apparition, his face twisted in agony. Paranormal investigators describe the ship as oppressive, as though the air itself carries weight. Some refuse to step back inside after a single night. It's said the Queen Mary isn't haunted by one or two ghosts, but by hundreds. Every soldier who never made it home, every passenger who took their last breath at sea. A ship that was never meant to rest, still sailing through memory. And then, the story that became legend. The Amityville House in New York. On November 13, 1974, Ronald DeFeo Jr. murdered his entire family, his parents, his two brothers, and his two sisters, as they slept. The crime shocked the nation. But what came after cemented the house as one of the most infamous haunted locations in the world. In December 1975, the Lutz family moved in, hoping to start fresh. Within days, they were plagued by phenomena so terrifying, they fled after only 28 days. They described swarms of flies filling rooms in the dead of winter, crucifixes twisting upside down, doors slamming on their own. George Lutz claimed he woke every night at 3:15 a.m., the exact time of the murders, to the sound of footsteps pacing the hall. Their daughter, Missy, began speaking to an imaginary friend named Jody, a pig-like creature with glowing red eyes. One night, George claimed he looked out the window and saw those very eyes staring at him from the dark. Perhaps the most disturbing detail was the green slime. The family reported it oozing from keyholes and walls, thick and foul-smelling. After less than a month, they fled, leaving behind their belongings, never to return. Skeptics argue it was a hoax, but neighbors and later investigators confirmed strange lights and sounds coming from the house long after it was abandoned. Whether or not the haunting was fabricated, the Amityville story reminds us of one chilling possibility: that when enough violence saturates a place, it leaves something behind. So what do these 5 stories tell us? A prison filled with endless whispers, a ghost who brought her killer to justice, a queen wandering headless through history, a ship heavy with the souls of war, and a house so stained with blood that even the walls seem to bleed. 5 stories from different times, different continents, different lives, and yet all suggesting the same truth. Maybe ghosts aren't just figments of imagination. Maybe they are echoes, human suffering so intense, so raw, that it burns itself into the world. Maybe they are warnings, signs that some tragedies never end. Or maybe they are invitations. Because if ghosts really do exist, if these stories are more than myth, then one question remains: how long before they find you?